Hello and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the To-Do List. This is your host, Eric Fisher. This is the show where we talk to the people behind the productivity. And this week, we are definitely talking to an extremely productive person, one of the people that I look up to in terms of their prolific social media and writing and speaking and balancing it all way of doing things. Jon Acuff has returned to the show once again. If you've not heard of Jon Acuff, then you're missing out. Jon Acuff is a New York Times best-selling author and speaker. He's written a number of books, including stuff Christians like, Quitter, and Start. Punch fear in the face, escape average, and do work that matters. And honestly, that's what this show is about, is doing work that matters. Not just doing work, but also doing enough work, getting the work done, getting it out of the way, and balancing it with having a life, and doing that life stuff productively as well. I still feel like there's got to be a better word out there for productivity, you know? Anyway, if you have a better word for it, go to the comments section of this episode. I would love to have a conversation about that. Or hit me up on Twitter, twitter.com/Eric with a K, the letter J, Fisher. Anyway, it's awesome to talk with Jon again. I had him on almost a year ago when the book Start came out. And this time around, I wanted to talk about this transition that's happened in his life and career, where he is now working from home again, or at least home-based again. He has transitioned from being a team member at the Dave Ramsey organization to working for himself, and he and his family being the team he is a part of now. I was very interested in that transition. I know a lot of people have that idea of, how do you balance doing prolific, awesome work from home and yet get stuff done and not just sit in your underwear all day, So Jon and I had a very interesting conversation. It was really cool to catch up with him. And honestly, we scratched the surface. There's a ton more to talk about with this topic. And I'd love to hear, again, other than what your idea for the word productivity, what it really means to you in the show notes of this episode, what are your biggest challenges when it comes to whether it's balancing day job, dream job, online branding, family, all those different realms of your life? What are your biggest challenges when it comes to that? Because that's just something I'm interested in delving deeper into and helping people out with that, whether it's getting more guests to speak into that from different angles or to speak into that a bit myself. So anyway, you can find the show notes for this episode at beyondthetodolist.com/55. Leave a comment on what those two things are. What do you think when you hear the word productivity? What do you think it means? What do you think it should mean? And then what are the struggles, the main struggles when it comes to balancing work and life and getting things done and all those different aspects? Go ahead and leave a comment in the show notes there, beyondthetodolist.com/55. Before we get into the interview, real quick, I want to just let you know that this episode, again, is brought to you by audiobooks.com. If you go to audiobooks.com/to-do, you can get a free audiobook. Audiobooks.com has an app that you can download to your Apple or Android device for offline listening, or you can stream them instantly. If you don't want to listen on your smartphone, you can stream those books on audiobooks.com itself or use your computer or tablet. They have an excellent selection of over 40,000 audiobooks, including bestsellers, new releases, classic favorites, as well as a number of the authors that have been on this podcast before. So if you have listened to some of the authors that have been on this show and you like their voice, then most of the time you'll hear them talk. They're the ones that are narrating. That's always an added bonus. I love when authors do that. If you're using multiple devices to listen to these audiobooks, you can switch devices and it's seamless. So if I'm sitting at my desk at work and I'm listening to an audiobook through the audiobooks.com or maybe my iPad, and then I want to go on the go, I just open the iPhone app, and I can pick up right where I left off. Pretty cool. To sign up and get your first audiobook for free, again, go to audiobooks.com/to-do and get your first book free. Well, this episode we're going to talk with Jon Acuff again. Jon, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
It is awesome to talk with you again. I know you have just recently undergone kind of a major shift in your life from working at Dave Ramsey's organization to working from home. And we're going to focus on kind of that shift for people, because a lot of people, if they've listened to you, they've followed your advice, they've looked to you as some, pioneer moving at least a few steps ahead of them, and they say, yeah, he's doing it, I can do it too. And then they either start working on something on the side or they make a leap and they leave their day job and they're doing this thing from home. And so that's where we're going to kind of spend some time. But yeah, what has that shift been like for you so far?
It's been good. I think I've been surprised at how much opportunity is out here. It's one thing to write about that this is a great time to kind of jump out, but it's another thing to be in the middle of the ocean. And so I think I've been really surprised at the number of organizations, people, blog stuff that it's still the Wild West. Like the internet revolution hasn't really even started yet. So I think I've had a great time just starting to dip my toe back into the swirl of things.
Well, it's been one of those big things that's maybe just caught you by surprise and you think, oh, I thought I knew this. I wrote a book about it. It's not what I expected.
Well, I mean, getting my blogs back up, the audience it's bigger than it's ever been, which that surprised me.
Yeah.
I thought, a month, you know how it is when you have a blog and you go down for an hour, you're like, it's all over. This is going to doom me. And so for me to be silent for a month and then have the audience come back, I guess I would say, oh, I wrote about community. I understand community. And then to really experience it was different than anything I thought.
Yeah. It's always different when you live it and experience it after you kind of are forced to.
Yeah, it's easier to write about chasing a dream than it is to chase a dream.
I feel that sometimes that way myself. People look at me and they're like, hey, can you tell me, like, how do I be more productive? And I'm like, well, dude, I struggle with it, like that. And that's why when I share about it, it's I feel like it's worth something because I've been struggling with it and it's tested to a certain degree,
Well, it's real.
Yeah.
It's been purchased through life.
We paid the dues, like Roy Vaden says.
Indeed.
So,
take the stairs.
Yes, exactly. So what does your day look like now, working from home versus like working for an employer? Or is there maybe a better way you'd describe your perspective on that?
Well, I haven't settled into a rhythm yet. And I don't know, when you're an entrepreneur, there's really not an average day. I spent the last 3 days in Atlanta brainstorming with some friends. And then today I got up early to play racquetball at 7 a.m. and they said, oh, no, we booked you at 7 p.m. And I was like, oh. So me and my buddy went and had a coffee and I did a radio interview in Branson, Missouri. And then I'm doing this podcast, and then after this, I'll go downtown Nashville and meet with my trainer to go over a couple things, and then I'll have lunch with a guy I met that just, I meet a lot of people that want to do what I do, and so I said, sure, we'll have lunch, and then I'm going to go over to Donald Miller's office just to kind of see what that's all about, and then I think I have a phone call with a possible awesome partner I might be working with, and so yeah, it's kind of it flows up and down. Some days it's quiet and I go write for a couple hours, and some days I try to do all my meetings on Friday.
Gotcha. Yeah, so actually it's more like maybe what an average week would look like, where you say, okay, that's my meeting day, but then I've got this day where it's like, you know what, I'm going to take that whole day off, do nothing but like family stuff, especially if you've got kids and a snow day.
Yeah, I'm trying to only work like 4 hours a day because I can get most of it. There's all these studies that you do your best work in 4 hours anyway. And so I'm trying to get a lot of stuff done, front load it, and then, read and hang out and engage with folks. And you really get to set the pace the way you want it when you're on your own to a degree. I mean, you have to have income coming in.
Right. Yeah. And I think in your case, that's one of those things where it's like if somebody were to leap, from a day job into, working on their dream job full time at home, it'd be good to, have a financially sound, stable place to, launch from. Right.
Yeah. And that's 5 years in the making.
Yeah.
I mean, it's similar to going like, Seth Godin saying you could do self-publishing. You can do self-publishing. Yeah, if you have that audience. I mean, and he doesn't say everybody can do it the same exact way, but I think some people see Seth Godin and go, well, Seth Godin did it. I could do it too. And yeah, Seth Godin really worked hard for like a decade. So I think it does depend on, who you are and where you're at. I don't think life is one size fits all.
So then people are watching you. They're watching your example, especially from, your quitter days where they're like, oh, well, I didn't have 8 jobs. I had like 2. So I'm doing better than him, so to speak,
Sure.
And so they've been, paying off their debt. They're solidifying stuff. They think they've got a great idea or ideas that they want to work on, but they're hesitant about maybe trusting themselves or not, slacking off at home. What would you say to maybe encourage them if they feel like I don't know if I'll get anything done if I work at home.
Yeah, well, I think you just have to understand how you work best. Like maybe you won't. Maybe you need to go work at the public library for the first year. And eventually maybe you get some space that you rent out. I don't know. Maybe you have a friend, my buddy Jeremy Cowart has an office. And so maybe someday I'll go over there and go, hey, can I sit in this corner and do some stuff, So I think you just have to understand how you work best. I mean, my wife doesn't want me kicking around the house all day. Like she's got stuff she likes to do here and, kind of keep things running. And so I do think it depends on you. And then the other thing, I think it depends on community. I think one of the things I'm going to launch this spring is a coaching network and do some group coaching where I do maybe two conference calls a month and maybe a private Facebook group and people are able to, be encouraged and be connected with other people that are doing similar things. I think that's important too.
Well, so speaking of Jenny, I figured she's probably used to you not being at home, especially because for a while there you were extremely active in terms of traveling and speaking and all that. And so, it's kind of that, wow, he's been not around for so long, well, intermittently, and now being home, like, now you're home sitting and not just sitting on your butt, but, doing work and all that. How does she play into this? Like, how has the shift been? Because at least it seems like that publicly, I mean, from my perspective is with the launch of the new blog and her being on social media, like out in public and involved with the community, your community now, it seems like the Acuff brand is now not just John, it's John and Jenny,
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that my long-term play is I don't want to have a personality-based brand. I think that what I want to do is have an idea-based brand. So that I can bring other people up under it. So I might be the face of some stuff right now, but with Jenny, I get questions from radio interviews about her book. And I know some sharp people, one of my big passions is sitting down with people and helping them figure out their personal brand. And so I just did that with somebody the other day, and I might start doing that, as on a client kind of fee basis. Because I think one of the greatest gifts I got at the Dave Ramsey organization was a PhD in that. That plus, my background is 10 years, or I guess it's 16 years now, good grief, of corporate branding. And so that's where I think that's kind of the misnomer is that I go through probably 15 steps for a tweet, and they happen quickly, but that's part of it. And so helping somebody else understand that. But yeah, I'd say that Jenny's, she's been on the sidelines for a while, and I think she wants to be deliberate about it. I mean, we won't, like with her book, for instance, we won't sign with a publisher because she doesn't want to tour. It'd be really unfair to a publisher to say, hey, give us a big advance or whatever, but we're not going to sell it, So we're going to self-publish, and what that also does is it gives me a chance to experiment with that.
Yeah.
And, do an ebook. And so I think she is more involved. I think there's still, though, we're pretty deliberate about don't expect a video channel from Jenny anytime soon.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was curious as if she was going to, do interviews to promote it, maybe, private interviews, not, public or podcasted interviews,
I think
but
we'll
maybe, blog ones.
Yeah, I think she'll do some stuff. It all depends. Like, if the book goes well and somebody, if Fox wants to have her on, awesome, go beyond. But she's not going to do a traditional book launch in the sense of I've got a blanket media with me, just because that's not her goal. I mean, if we can sell, 10,000 copies, awesome. That's great. And it's a question. She's only writing it because for the last 5 years, the two questions I've gotten the most are, how do I dream with my spouse? And then will you do some coaching network stuff?
Yeah. So there's not going to be any kind of Acuff summer vacation family book tour? Probably
not over her dead body. I think we'll do some book signings. We've talked to some people already about that. But no, there's no way. She just plus this summer we're booked solid with speaking gigs, and the whole family will be going. So even if we wanted to, we're not gonna do anything crazy.
Nice. What is the book about, as much as you can share at this point?
Sure. Well, the book's about how do you be married to a dreamer, and it's kind of what are the core things you need to do. So it's very practical. Jenny's a very practical person. I've written about a couple of these things, and so has Jenny. I mean, Jenny the other day had a post about how long it took us to learn that feedback on an idea isn't attacking an idea. And you see so many marriages where the husband or the wife is supposed to just be a cheerleader, and if they dare to ask a question about it, it's seen as you're attacking it. and that's just not healthy. So it's a lot about how do you communicate? How do you add your talent to their talent? How do you kind of move from, I'm on the sideline to I'm an active participant? Like I would say that over the last 13 years, we've realized that Jenny's my writing partner. And that took us a long time to get to, but I believe that's very true. And so learning how to do that together has been a great lesson for us.
That's awesome. I think that so the next book will really kind of be, well, it'll be her book, but it'll still be kind of you guys doing a writing partner thing.
Yeah, I don't know what role I'll have in it. There will definitely be sections where I jump in and say, hey, I was thinking about this, in response to something. But it won't be co-authored in the sense of it's Married to a Dreamer by John and Jenny Acuff.
Right.
It'll definitely be by Jenny Acuff.
It'll be by her, but it'll be basically based on her experiences in the trenches with you.
Yeah, in the trenches with me, and then in the trenches with other people. I mean, she's been around this idea for the last 5 years, and her parents kind of dreamed together, and her mom's a home builder, and so is her dad, and so she certainly has experience there. But there's just, if you look for it, there's not a lot of good information on it. It's funny what I don't know. It's kind of like how I look at books about social media with kids. So there's books about how to help kids with social media, and a lot of them are written from it's an evil thing, here's how to protect them. But very few of them are written from it can be good and bad, because often the author hasn't dominated social media. So like if I write that book, I'm writing, you can build schools in Vietnam. You can get your kid a job. You can, build a platform that can get you a book deal. Like there's not so my hope is that this book with Jenny isn't just like, here's how to, not have fights, or there's a million here's how to have awesome marriage books. This is going to be much more of here's how to do something together.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing to keep in mind is like people who, they're listening to you and they're thinking, oh, well, of course he's at home knocking it out. He's batching it and all this stuff. And you're basically saying, look, I'm kind of, as much as you are able to, even though you're highly active still, you're still kind of taking it easy. You're still figuring it out, and you have a different you and your family have a different story than anybody else. I mean, that's just the way it is. We all have a different story. You've been working at this for so long. You've already got this community going, and so,
yeah, I mean, it's taken time.
Yeah,
the blogs have taken a lot of time, and it's been fun to watch that. But yeah, it's definitely a long time. I mean, it's a process. I've been writing online for 13 years, so it's not. I don't think we should have that pressure on ourselves of, well, I've had a kid, now I'll become a mom blogger and expect that to be amazing on day 2,
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, so speaking of kids, you're also at home, and I know one of the things you just hated being away from home so many times, by yourself and missing the kids and missing your wife is now that you're home, have you had that thing kick in where it's like, oh no, I'm home with them all the time now, and it's like,
no,
do I feel guilty?
We haven't had a summer at home.
Okay.
I think that might be different. And they're at school.
Right.
And so and I do more stuff than, so this week I did 3 days in Atlanta, and in 2 weeks I'll do 3 days at Hilton Head for a leadership retreat kind of thing. And so I still do some stuff, but I think, and it's hard to say because this is the quiet time. Even when I worked with Dave, the winter's kind of quiet, and then spring and fall are conference season. And so I think Jenny and I both know that 14 and 15 are going to be intense years because we have to kind of get the engine going again. My long-term goal is to have a house in downtown Franklin where we live, this little cool area, and people come to me and I do small 10-person events or just 2-people events if it's a client. And so that's the long-term goal, and it'll just take us time to get there. We certainly don't have an income to afford an additional office house right now,
Right. So then working at home, I mean, I know you ran through a day earlier when we were talking, and you're all over the place. You're here doing this. You're talking to me right now. Then you're going to go off and do something else. And do you have like a home base, like a home office that you have an anchor place to, or do you see it that way?
Well, in our house, I have a home office that's, just a small little office with a bunch of books and a desk. And then there's a coffee shop I go to sometimes. But the challenge is Franklin's so small that everybody knows each other that sometimes you have to be really careful about where you work because you end up in conversations and not working. And so I'll go to the public library a lot because nobody cool is walking through the public library, So there's a couple places I know I can go write here or here, and then a friend of mine has a writing studio for musicians that he lets me use, and so it's this old 1920s cabin, and I'll go use that sometimes. But I wouldn't say I have a rhythm yet. I would say that in the spring I'll start to build one, but right now we're still, it takes time to kind of figure out what you want to do after you've had an intense experience.
How do you find a place when you're looking for a place to sit and do work and focus is really the key. Like you're looking for, if I'm going to go and sit and do something, I want to go and sit and do that thing versus get interrupted or have conversations started. So what are kind of the criteria for a good working space for you?
Well, for me, is it low traffic or high traffic? I mean, and it's all different. Like it might be that, maybe there's times in your life when you need something that's very active, like you're stuck on an idea and you need the energy of people. But a lot of times you just need to be quiet. So, if I'm at a coffee shop, I'll find the place, you hopefully find a place that has an outlet, an easy to plug in outlet. You also try to find a place that doesn't have, it's not a throwaway, like in that you're upstairs in a corner. Nobody has to walk past you to go order coffee. And I'm thinking about our coffee shop that I go to sometimes. If you're downstairs, that's where you go to be seen and talk. And if you're upstairs, you go to work. And so, for me, if I'm looking into a corner or and my back's to the action, fine. I just think sometimes when we don't want to work, we go to public places and then act surprised that we're not getting something done.
Yeah. Well, and then do you go with any kind of certain intention, like, okay, I'm going and I'm going to sit and I'm going to batch a bunch of blog posts or? Oh,
yeah, totally. I mean, that's how I, so probably in the next couple of days, I'll go, okay, I need to write 6 30-day hustle posts. I have this program that I send out once a day. And so I'll go ahead and write those and, or I'll try to look ahead and go, okay, I'm going to Colorado next week for a few days with my family to ski. And I'll go, okay, who knows the signal, the Wi-Fi. So right. I need to have these days of blogs or these days of whatever taken care of so that I don't have to worry about that. The way I look at writing is there's writing and then there's brainstorming or research. And when I'm writing, it's writing time. And when I'm brainstorming and researching, fine, that's fine. But if I have a list of things I need to accomplish, I just go. If anything, I have a harder time Jenny would be more worried about me overworking. Like she would say, I told her me and my buddy were going to start keeping our time sheets together. And she was like, well, you have to be honest with him. And I was like, what do you mean? She said, if it's 80, you have to write down 80. And I was like, okay, because I like to do it. And, I like being the underdog, and kind of a lot of people think, wow, what a change. You've your life's very different now. It'll never be the same, and I like that challenge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's also that challenge of, or maybe it's a struggle for you, I don't know, where how do you decide what's enough for today and maybe to be satisfied with, all right, I've got this done, I can stop now?
I mean, I'm very simplistic in that. There's so many great books written about goal setting and all that, but I'll try to do the thing that I have to get done. Like I know today I have one idea that I have to get done, and then anything else is really bonus. And then I think that, I don't know, enough is a tough thing. The clock doesn't lie. And so if I say, I mean, a good natural break for me is it's 3:45 and my kids are getting home from school. And so I want to be present when they get off the bus. And so, that becomes the thing. And so then I make sure that whatever I'm working on, by the time they get off the bus, I'm ready to go. And so I think it's little things like that you be careful about.
Yeah. And then do you allow yourself to maybe schedule stuff? I mean, you're going to go out of town. You were just in Atlanta, and obviously family probably wasn't with you. But when they get off the bus, do you try to say, okay, until, from when they get off the bus till a certain point in time, they have me, they have my attention?
I mean, the big thing for me is, Like if it's a Saturday and I wake up and I just don't use my phone all day.
Yeah.
Or, we played cards last night and nobody's looking at their phone when we're playing cards. And so I think it's a series of those kind of things where you go, okay, we're together in this, or we go places. So yeah, I mean, we're deliberate about it, but yeah, we'll go to Crested Butte. I think we leave next week sometime, and we'll be there for 4 or 5 days, and I won't be working then, or in the morning, if they need to get ready for school, that's not a time for me to do a bunch of work. That's a time for me to help them with school. And so I try to acknowledge that's a different time.
Yeah. So it's really about banking as much time as you can with them so that when you have to make the exception, it's not, oh man, Dad's on the phone again.
Exactly. And so I try to be deliberate about it. So it's worked so far, but I mean, we're definitely not experts at it, but we're trying.
Yeah. Well, that's the key right there is like a lot of people would look at you and say, well, John's an expert in doing all this stuff, but seasons of life change. And so you got to learn to shift with it.
Yeah. It's a new one. That's for certain.
That's awesome. Well, I know our time is winding down. Share with me and the audience where they can go find you online.
Sure. I guess the most active place is acuff.me, which is just A, C as in cat, U, F as in Frank, F as in Frank, .me, or John Acuff on Twitter, JON. Is probably the best place. And yeah, it's fun to connect. I try to be as active as I can be with a balance. So anytime a listener wants to connect, that's where to find me.
Awesome, John. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
Well, thanks again to John Acuff for stopping by and talking with us about getting awesome work done. Please let John know you appreciated this episode by shooting him a message on Facebook or especially Twitter. Go to twitter.com, JONACUFF. Just let him know you appreciated his appearance on this episode and make sure to subscribe to his blog at acuff.me. And in the show notes for this episode, again, at beyondthetodolist.com/55, I've put links to a number of my favorite of his blog posts, including one of the ones that Jenny Acuff wrote, which was awesome. And also don't forget to go to the show notes of this episode at beyondthetodolist.com/55. Leave me your definition for the word productivity or what you think it should mean, as well as, again, what is your biggest struggle when it comes to getting awesome work done. Please stop by our sponsor at audiobooks.com/todo and grab your free audio book to show appreciation, sponsorship of this show, and supporting Beyond the To-Do List. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you next time. Beyond the To-Do List is a proud member of the Noodle.mx Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at Noodle.mx. Learn how to podcast, theorize over the TV shows Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, and Under the Dome. Laugh with our clean comedy, delve into science fiction and philosophy, learn critical thinking from movie reviews, and more at Noodle.mx.